Welcome the Lord's chosen. The moment you realize the battlefield was built around you, everything changes. Every life has moments where reality seems ordinary, predictable, even comfortable. But then, in the quietest corner of your day, you notice the pattern, the subtle resistance, the unusual setbacks, the people who suddenly disappear when things get real. Studies show that over 70% of high-achieving individuals report feeling unseen sabotage at some point in their lives, not accidental mistakes, not simple coincidences, but deliberate, almost invisible forces that aim to redirect their path. It's like the universe handed you a VIP pass to success, and someone thought, not so fast. Here's the twist. What if all those strange misfortunes, those awkward betrayals, the whispers behind your back, they weren't random at all? What if they were part of something larger, something darker, something designed to test not just your patience, but your purpose? This isn't a ghost story for sleep-deprived nights. This is the moment you realize that everything you thought was ordinary was actually a stage, and the spotlight was always meant for you. And yes, it's terrifying, but also kind of hilarious if you think about it. Everyone's plotting, everyone's scheming, and yet here you are, the unknowing protagonist, getting the director's cut of a demonic drama without even buying a ticket. Every step you've taken, every blind spot you've trusted, has been carefully monitored, calculated, and yes, sometimes awkwardly clumsy. It's the kind of chaos that makes even the most serious forces trip over their own plans. By the end of this, you'll understand that being chosen isn't just a blessing. It's a responsibility wrapped in deception, trial, and revelation. You've just stumbled into a plot that was never meant to reveal itself so clearly, and the only thing left is to see it for what it truly is. A blueprint of your enemy's fear, a map of your own strength, and a wake-up call that the world has been moving around you, not with you. And the best part? Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Number one, the plot was never about destroying you. It was about delaying you. Most people think when something bad happens, someone or something is out to completely break them. That's the easy story to tell yourself. The truth is far stranger and much more precise. The plot you just uncovered wasn't about your destruction at all. It was about timing. Everything you went through, every obstacle, every betrayal, every moment where the universe seemed stacked against you, wasn't meant to ruin your life. It was meant to slow you down, just enough that your momentum would wobble, your focus would blur, and you might miss a single opportunity that could have changed everything. Think about it. Delays are invisible, pain is obvious, fear is obvious, but a delay, it hides in plain sight. It's subtle. It's the whisper that makes you second-guess yourself, the friendly advice that actually leads you away from the right door, the distraction that looks harmless until you realize you've spent months going in circles. That's how the plot works. Not through dramatic attacks or catastrophic blows, but through carefully calibrated interruptions that keep a chosen one from arriving at their moment too soon. And here's the kicker. Most people never even notice they've been delayed. They blame themselves. They blame circumstances. They think they're unlucky or not meant for greatness. But you've seen the pattern. You've traced the energy. You've realized that these delays weren't coincidences. They were designed, subtle and strategic, to test whether you would keep moving forward, even when everything seemed pointless. The plot wanted to see if you would slow down, give up, or listen to the voices urging caution over courage. The reality is, delays teach more than destruction ever could. They sharpen patience, refine perception, and force you to distinguish between true opportunity and illusion. The forces that tried to slow you down never imagined you would notice. They didn't expect that you would turn their interruptions into clarity, their timing into insight, and their subtle manipulations into proof of your own resilience. The moment you see it for what it is, the moment you recognize that the plot was never about ending you, but about testing your ability to endure, you start moving faster, smarter, and more intentionally than you ever have. And that is when you finally break through the invisible chains they set in place. Number 2, you were targeted because you disrupted an unspoken hierarchy. The truth is, most of the resistance you faced wasn't random, and it wasn't personal in the way people think. You were targeted because your very presence upset a balance that nobody admitted existed. There's always an invisible hierarchy in every environment. Work, family, friendship circles, even online spaces. Some people quietly assume authority, some quietly collect influence, and most quietly protect their comfort by keeping others in their expected place. Then you came along. You spoke differently, acted differently, or simply refused to follow the unspoken rules, and suddenly the invisible order began to wobble. That wobble doesn't go unnoticed. It triggers fear, envy, and silent countermeasures from those who rely on the illusion that nothing should threaten their position. People who seemed supportive were often the ones most threatened because they had built their identity around being at the top, or at least above the chaos they assumed others would fall into. They couldn't see you as a peer or an equal, so they acted as if your rise was a direct assault on them. Behind polite smiles, subtle discouragements, and casual comments lies the machinery of resistance. It's clever, patient, and highly attuned to anyone who shows even a flicker of potential to disrupt the status quo. They weren't trying to crush you outright. They just wanted to protect their own narrative, their perceived relevance, and their unspoken throne. Here's where it gets even more revealing. The higher your clarity, the louder their fear. Every confident decision you made, every boundary you set, every step you took outside their expectations sent tiny seismic waves through their carefully maintained order. What you might have seen as ordinary friction or misunderstandings were actually tests, probes, and attempts to redirect you back into the pattern they found safe. They weren't necessarily conscious of all of it, but the universe, through human behavior, was using them as instruments of resistance. Once you understand that the targeting was never personal, that it was a response to your disruption of invisible hierarchies, you begin to see the entire pattern differently. You recognize who was truly aligned with your growth, who feared it, and who existed solely to maintain an illusion that you weren't supposed to shatter. That realization alone changes the game, because suddenly every obstacle becomes a clue, every conflict a signal, and every challenge a confirmation that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Number 3, the attack started before you knew you were worth protecting. The strangest part about being targeted isn't when it happens. It's that it often begins long before you even understand your own value. The forces working against you don't wait for you to become powerful, confident, or fully aware of your potential. They move early, quietly, almost invisibly, because they recognize what you could become before you do. The attacks weren't meant to ruin you. They were preemptive. They were testing your resilience, your focus, and your ability to navigate a world that isn't ready for someone like you to rise. Think about it. How many times did you feel a subtle resistance that made no sense at the time? A friend turning cold for no reason, opportunities falling through despite your effort, the nagging sense that someone somewhere was quietly working against your progress. That wasn't coincidence. That was the universe, or whatever force you choose to call it, making sure that when the moment came for you to step fully into your power, you would be ready. You weren't just being prepared, you were being measured. The attack before your awareness is a strange kind of cruelty. It doesn't hit you with clear warnings or obvious obstacles. Instead, it whispers doubt into your life, presents small, confusing setbacks, and tests whether you will shrink or push through. And most people never see it. They think life is just messy or unfair, never realizing that someone has been keeping score long before they even realize the game existed. What's fascinating is that these early challenges are actually a form of protection. If the attacks had waited until you fully understood your power, the resistance could have been overwhelming. By starting early, the forces involved ensured you would build endurance, intuition, and strategic thinking along the way. Every subtle obstacle, every invisible shove was shaping you into someone capable of handling the magnitude of what was to come. When you finally recognize this, you see your past in a completely different light. The delays, betrayals, and quiet sabotage weren't signs of weakness. They were evidence that the world knew you were extraordinary before you did. You weren't just surviving. You were being molded, measured, and readied for a purpose that demanded everything from the start, long before you even knew you were worth protecting. Number 4, you were surrounded by people who wanted access to you, not growth with you. One of the cruelest truths you uncover when you realize the plot against you is how many people around you weren't really rooting for you. They were rooting for what they could get from you. They didn't see your potential as something to nurture or celebrate. They saw it as a resource, a tool, or a trophy. They wanted access to your energy, your ideas, your connections, and your achievements. But they had no interest in sharing the burden of growth, the discipline it takes, or the loneliness that comes with being ahead of the curve. Their support was conditional, transactional, and self-serving, and the moment you started moving in a direction that didn't directly benefit them, their patience and loyalty vanished. It's subtle at first. They offer advice that sounds caring, but actually guides you toward paths that are convenient for them. They ask questions framed as concern, but are really intelligence gathering, testing the limits of your ambition without wanting to contribute to it. They celebrate wins from a distance while quietly judging the effort it took, resenting the fact that you're investing in yourself rather than in their comfort. This isn't malice in most cases. It's a reflection of fear. They fear your independence, your clarity, and your alignment with something greater than their limited vision. The realization hits hard because it forces you to distinguish between genuine allies and those whose interest is purely circumstantial. True growth is never about how much you can give someone else to use. It's about how much you can grow without being manipulated, distracted, or drained by their hidden agendas. Once you see that the people surrounding you were more drawn to your access than to your evolution, everything starts to make sense. Past disappointments, betrayals, and frustrating interactions aren't just random. They were necessary filters. And the clarity you gain from this is powerful. You stop wasting energy on those who can't grow with you. Stop explaining your vision to people who only measure their benefit, and start recognizing the rare individuals whose support is aligned with your journey. The plot against you may have used people as instruments, but by seeing it for what it is, you reclaim your power, redefine your circle, and understand that the most important growth is the one you achieve without anyone else's permission. Number 5, the true attack was against your clarity, not your comfort. When you start peeling back the layers of the plot against you, one thing becomes undeniable. The attacks were never aimed at your comfort. They were aimed at your clarity. People think conflict is about taking away your happiness, breaking your spirit, or making life unbearable. That's the surface-level story. The real target has always been your ability to see clearly, your intuition, your understanding, your sense of direction. Clarity is dangerous to anyone or anything that thrives on control, manipulation, or secrecy, and the forces opposing you knew this instinctively. Every distraction, every misleading conversation, every subtle nudge toward doubt wasn't meant to make you miserable. It was designed to blur your vision. When your clarity is compromised, decisions become slower, intuition becomes unreliable, and you start questioning what you once knew without hesitation. They didn't need to hurt you physically or emotionally in dramatic ways. All they needed to do was introduce enough noise to make you second-guess yourself, to make the obvious seem confusing, and to make your purpose feel like a distant, intangible thing. The moment your mind wavers is the moment control shifts away from you. The brilliance of targeting clarity is that it often goes unnoticed. You blame circumstances, bad luck, or your own overthinking, never realizing that the real war is fought in the mind. The people, events, and setbacks surrounding you are tools in this subtle campaign. The less clear you are about your goals, your boundaries, and your potential, the easier it is for interference to shape your choices. Recognizing this changes everything. Once you understand that the attack is on clarity, not comfort, you stop playing their game unconsciously. You start filtering noise from truth, intuition from distraction, and meaningful insight from deliberate manipulation. You realize that discomfort, setbacks, and friction were never signs of weakness. They were tests to sharpen your focus. Your true power emerges when you reclaim clarity and stop letting confusion dictate your path. When clarity returns, you see the patterns that were hidden, understand the strategies that were used against you, and finally, you move forward with a precision that cannot be derailed. Number 6, your isolation was not random. It was a strategic containment. One of the most unsettling truths about the path of a chosen one is how isolation seems to creep in at exactly the moments you need support the most. You might have thought it was coincidence, bad timing, or just bad luck. The reality is far more precise. The forces working against you don't just throw obstacles in your way. They control the environment around you, and isolation is one of their most effective tools. You weren't abandoned randomly. You were contained strategically. Every person who vanished, every opportunity that didn't materialize, every moment when it felt like the world had left you alone, it wasn't happenstance. It was intentional. Isolation forces you to rely on yourself in ways that comfort never could. It exposes the gaps in your own understanding, tests the limits of your patience, and forces you to confront the parts of yourself you'd usually ignore. The people around you are often extensions of the system designed to either feed your growth or distract you from it. When they step back, disappear, or fail to rise to the occasion, it's a signal, not a betrayal. You are being contained in a crucible where the real work is internal. You're forced to sharpen intuition, build resilience, and learn to navigate challenges without leaning on crutches that others provide. The subtle genius of strategic isolation is that it doesn't feel like an attack at first. It feels like loneliness, neglect, or misfortune. But every chosen one who has ever stepped fully into their purpose understands the moment of clarity, when isolation reveals itself not as punishment, but as preparation. The world isn't ready to witness your ascent while you still rely on external validation. By being alone, you discover strength, insight, and vision that cannot be borrowed from anyone else. Once you see it, the fear and frustration of being alone transform into understanding. You realize the absence of others was not a void. It was space. Space to think, to evolve, to strategize, and to become unshakable. Isolation wasn't random. It was deliberate. It was the stage being set for a breakthrough, one that only the strongest, most determined, and most aware could survive. And when you emerge from it, the world, and everyone in it, must reckon with who you've become. Number 7. They prayed for your success but feared your arrival. It's one of the cruelest ironies you'll ever notice. Some people genuinely wish you well only until your rise threatens their comfort. On the surface, they cheer, they offer support, they act as if your success is their success. Behind that facade, though, there's a current of fear. fear that you'll surpass them, outgrow them, or make their influence irrelevant. They don't just want to see you succeed. They want to see you succeed on their terms, within boundaries that feel safe to them. The moment you step outside those boundaries, the prayers, the encouragement, the support, all of it quietly shifts into resistance, judgment, or passive sabotage. This fear isn't always conscious. People can convince themselves they're acting in your best interest while subtly redirecting your energy, questioning your choices, or creating conditions where your confidence wavers. They fear the moment you claim your power fully, because when that happens, the illusion of control they relied on vanishes. Every compliment, every friendly advice, every seemingly harmless suggestion had the potential to be a trap, soft enough that you wouldn't notice, but sharp enough to shape your decisions. The tragedy is that most chosen ones don't see it until the pattern repeats itself again and again. By the time you recognize the discrepancy between their words and their intentions, you've already invested energy, time, and trust into relationships that never intended to evolve alongside you. But this recognition isn't just painful, it's liberating. Once you see that their prayers were really about your delay, not your destiny, you gain a clarity most people never reach. You understand who truly supports growth and who simply wants to benefit from it without facing their own fears of irrelevance. The brilliance in this realization is that it transforms fear into fuel. Their apprehension becomes proof of your progress. Their hesitation signals the exact threshold you needed to cross to step fully into your power. Every person who prayed for you while secretly fearing you becomes a mirror, reflecting not obstacles, but milestones. And when you finally move beyond their fear, you don't just survive. You thrive in a way that proves you were never meant to fit inside the expectations of anyone else. Number 8, your gift threatened those who thought they knew you. The most uncomfortable truth about being chosen is that your growth doesn't just challenge circumstances. It challenges people who have grown comfortable with the version of you they thought they understood. Your gift, your talent, your insight, it isn't just a personal advantage. It's a mirror that forces others to confront their own limitations, their complacency, and the illusions they've built about who you are. Those who thought they knew you suddenly feel exposed. They realize that the person they assumed they could predict has become unpredictable, powerful, and in ways they never imagined, untouchable. This discomfort breeds resistance, often disguised as advice, criticism, or skepticism. People around you may not openly attack you, but their subtle comments, sideways glances, or passive-aggressive behaviors are signs of their fear. They want the version of you that fit neatly into their expectations, quiet, agreeable, and contained. Your gift, by its very nature, refuses containment. It forces visibility, authenticity, and motion. It challenges anyone who has anchored their own identity to the old, smaller version of you, and suddenly your presence becomes a problem for them. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your evolution exposes their stagnation. What's fascinating is that this threat is almost involuntary. People rarely realize they are reacting to your growth rather than to you personally. They can't help but measure themselves against your rising potential, and in that measurement they feel inadequate, insecure, or even resentful. Their actions, consciously or not, become part of the subtle plot that seeks to slow your momentum or draw you back into predictability. Recognizing this reality shifts your perception entirely. You stop internalizing their resistance as a reflection of your worth and start seeing it as confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. Their discomfort becomes a compass pointing toward your impact. Every subtle sabotage, every judgment, and every attempt to pull you back is proof that your gift is powerful enough to unsettle those who thought they had a blueprint for controlling you. And in that unsettling, you realize the true weight of your influence. Your presence isn't just your own. It forces the world to reckon with the truth you carry. Number 9, your pain was meant to convert you into something predictable. The harshest lesson in uncovering a plot against you is realizing that your suffering wasn't random. It was designed to shape you. But not in the way most people think. The goal wasn't to destroy you or even to discourage you outright. The real intention was to mold you into something controllable, something predictable. Pain, disappointment, and betrayal were never just obstacles. They were tools. They were placed strategically to see how you would react, to test whether you could be redirected, manipulated, or slowed down. The aim was subtle, not to stop you completely, but to turn you into a version of yourself that could be anticipated and influenced. Consider how easy it is to manipulate someone who responds to every challenge with fear, anger, or confusion. People become predictable when their reactions are scripted by external pressure rather than internal conviction. The forces opposing you banked on this. Every frustration, every unfair circumstance, every betrayal was a potential lever. They wanted to see whether your choices would remain your own, or if you would begin responding to life according to someone else's design. They didn't need to attack your strengths directly. They only needed to disturb your equilibrium enough to nudge you into patterns they could foresee. The brilliance of this strategy is that it's almost invisible until you start to notice the repetition. You begin to see the same cycles playing out, the same types of people testing your boundaries, the same internal battles rising at predictable moments. That's when the realization hits. This was never about your failure. It was about your behavior. The question was whether you would react like a puppet or move with awareness and purpose. When you finally recognize this, the game changes completely. The pain that once seemed cruel now becomes a teacher. Every setback becomes a clue, every betrayal a lesson, every discomfort a test of self-mastery. You stop being predictable. You reclaim your power, and suddenly the very forces that tried to shape you into something manageable have nothing to hold on to. Your response is no longer theirs to control, and your trajectory becomes unstoppable because it is forged entirely by you. Number 10, you never lost people. You were forced to drop dead weight disguised as support. One of the most painful realizations on the path of a chosen one is that not everyone you trusted was meant to stay. At first it feels like loss, betrayal, or abandonment. But when you look closer, you see the truth. You didn't lose them. They were never meant to carry the weight of your journey. What you experienced was a necessary shedding of dead weight, disguised as support. Some people stay in your life for convenience, for ego, or for what they can take from your presence. They aren't bad people in most cases, but they weren't equipped to grow alongside you, to handle your evolution, or to honor the intensity of your purpose. The plot against you often uses these relationships like sandbags, tying you down without you realizing it. They appear loyal, they act helpful, they smile, they nod, they reassure. But every step you took toward expansion reminded them of their own limitations. Their presence was comfortable for you only until your trajectory demanded more than they could give. And the moment it did, you start noticing cracks, subtle withdrawals, hesitation, or even judgment. What seems like loss is actually liberation, a clearing of space for people who resonate with your energy and purpose. This realization changes the way you see your past struggles, the disappointments, the betrayals, the abrupt exits of friends or mentors. All of it was part of a filtration system. The universe, or whatever forces are at work, has a way of removing anything that will slow down someone who is chosen. It's harsh, but precise. It doesn't leave you empty. It gives you room to think, to strategize, to grow without being weighed down by those who are emotionally, spiritually, or intellectually incompatible with your journey. Once you understand this, it flips your perspective. You no longer grieve the absence of people who were never aligned with your destiny. Instead, you recognize the blessing hidden in their departure. Their removal wasn't punishment, it was a signal that you are entering a phase where only those who match your vision, resilience, and intensity can walk with you. The people who remain are no longer part of your past. They are part of your elevation, and everything else was just preparing the way. Number 11, your discernment grew too sharp for the plot to stay hidden. The moment you start noticing the patterns, the subtle manipulations, and the energy of those around you, everything shifts. Your discernment isn't just a skill you develop over time, it's a weapon, and once it sharpens, the plot against you can no longer hide in shadows. People think sabotage relies on overt action, on loud betrayal or dramatic setbacks, but the truth is far more precise. The forces working against you rely on subtlety, on manipulation hidden beneath layers of normalcy, trust, or routine. They count on you being distracted, unquestioning, and unaware. Your growing discernment interrupts that plan entirely. You begin to notice the small things, the tone in someone's voice that doesn't match their words, the hesitation in advice that should be clear, the invisible pressure to make choices that feel convenient for others rather than aligned with your purpose. These tiny cracks, once invisible, become glaringly obvious. Every inconsistency, every subtle nudge meant to divert you, every carefully crafted distraction is exposed because your ability to read reality has outpaced the plot's design. The moment you recognize it, the narrative that controlled you starts unraveling. What's extraordinary is that this awareness doesn't just protect you, it transforms your power. When you see the underlying intent behind actions, words, and circumstances, you no longer react blindly. You respond strategically, decisively, and without hesitation. The plot that relied on your uncertainty collapses because it cannot withstand clarity. Every subtle attempt to manipulate or redirect you becomes evidence rather than confusion. Your discernment forces transparency where secrecy thrived, honesty where deception lingered, and movement where stagnation was intended. This sharpening of perception is both a shield and a catalyst. It protects you from interference while accelerating your growth, forcing the plot to fail by design. The world no longer dictates your direction, you dictate your world. The forces opposing you, once hidden and careful, are laid bare. And in that revelation, you realize the truth. The more you see, the less they can influence you, and the closer you move to the power, purpose, and destiny that has always been yours. Number 12, the enemy didn't fear your strength. It feared your awakening. Strength alone is visible. It's easy to measure, to challenge, and even to mimic. But awakening is different. It's invisible, internal, and far more dangerous to those who wish to control, manipulate, or delay you. The forces that opposed you weren't alarmed by how much you could lift, endure, or achieve. They were terrified of the moment you became fully aware of your own power, your purpose, and your potential. Awakening doesn't just change outcomes. It changes the way you move, the way you see, and the way you interact with the world. That's what made you a threat. When someone awakens to their true self, they stop seeking permission, approval, or validation. They begin to operate from clarity rather than habit, intuition rather than fear, and vision rather than obligation. That kind of presence disrupts carefully orchestrated plans because it can't be predicted or contained. Those who relied on confusion, manipulation, or subtle sabotage to control the narrative suddenly find themselves powerless. Your awakening was a signal that their influence had limits. and those limits were being exposed with every conscious choice you made. This fear manifests in ways that are almost invisible at first. Comments, friendly advice, subtle competition, or even passive-aggressive behavior all increase as a response to your growing awareness. The world tests you not because your power is dangerous, it's because your awakening is unstoppable if left unchecked. The fear is never about what you've already accomplished. It's about what you are capable of, once nothing and no one can divert you from your path. Understanding this shifts everything. The resistance you encountered, the people who hesitated, and the obstacles that seemed unnecessary all become signs of your progression. They are not marks of failure. They are proof that your awakening is real, that your clarity cannot be ignored, and that your presence demands recognition. Strength can be challenged and tested, but awakening rewrites the rules entirely. Once you embrace it, the world can no longer hold you to old expectations, and those who feared your emergence must finally reckon with the reality that you are no longer the version of yourself they thought they understood. Number 13. You are being conditioned to stand alone because not everyone can go where you're going. One of the most isolating and yet transformative truths of being chosen is realizing that not everyone in your life can walk beside you as you rise. The challenges, the subtle betrayals, and even the quiet withdrawals of those you trusted were not coincidences. They were conditioning. You were being prepared to stand alone because the journey you're on demands a level of focus, awareness, and resilience that few can match. Not everyone is meant to share your vision, support your growth, or withstand the intensity that comes with stepping into your purpose. The forces around you, intentionally or not, filtered your circle to ensure that only those aligned with your path remain. Isolation in this context is not punishment. It's preparation. It forces you to develop independence, sharpen intuition, and trust yourself without relying on external validation. The world has a way of testing chosen ones by withdrawing the support that was once taken for granted. Those who remain are not just allies. They are people whose energy, vision, and commitment resonate with the magnitude of your journey. The absence of others is a sign, not of failure, but of necessary separation. You are being conditioned to rely on your own clarity, strength, and judgment in ways that comfort never could have taught. This conditioning also reveals hidden truths about people around you. Some will fail to keep pace, some will hesitate, and some will vanish altogether. Their departure isn't a reflection of your worth. It's an illustration of their limits. The lesson is brutal but precise. The more extraordinary your path, the smaller the group that can accompany you without being overwhelmed or distracted. By learning to navigate the journey alone, you develop an unshakable confidence and an understanding that your destiny cannot be compromised by fear, doubt, or insufficient support from others. Standing alone becomes your superpower. It clears the noise, strengthens your resolve, and aligns you with the people, opportunities, and realities meant for you. When you embrace this, you no longer see solitude as weakness, but as a filter, a crucible, and ultimately, a launching point for the extraordinary life you are destined to claim. Number 14, your breakthrough was the trigger that revealed everyone's true role. The moment you uncover a plot against you, the real revelation isn't just about the forces working against you. It's about the people around you. Your breakthrough acts like a spotlight, exposing motives, intentions, and allegiances that were previously hidden in plain sight. Suddenly, the friends you trusted, the colleagues you relied on, even family members you assumed had your back, all reveal themselves in ways that make everything you experienced make sense. Your growth forces the world to respond, and in that response the masks drop. Those who were genuinely aligned with your journey stepped forward, clear and steady. Those who were distractions, saboteurs, or opportunists reveal themselves through subtle actions, hesitant words, or glaring absences. This moment of clarity is disorienting because it rewrites your understanding of your past. Betrayals that once seemed inexplicable, advice that felt off, support that felt conditional, all of it falls into place. You begin to see that the people in your life were never random. They were mirrors, tests, and filters, each placed to challenge you, delay you, or prepare you. Your breakthrough doesn't just advance your position, it unmasks the true roles others played in your story. It's a revelation that forces you to reassess your relationships, your energy investments, and your priorities. What makes this even more powerful is that it's not just about knowing who is aligned, it's about realizing why they stayed or left. The alignment isn't about convenience, it's about resonance. Those who remain are those whose energy, vision, and integrity are strong enough to match the intensity of your path. Those who fall away were never meant to travel this far with you. The breakthrough forces everyone to step out of shadows, some willingly, some involuntarily, so you can see clearly who belongs in your life moving forward. Understanding this transforms your perception of struggle. The obstacles, betrayals, and manipulations weren't just hardships, they were catalysts. They were designed to sharpen your discernment and prepare you for a life where clarity matters more than comfort. Your breakthrough doesn't just change you, it rewrites the roles of everyone around you, revealing who was helping, who was hindering, and who was simply waiting for the curtain to rise so they could show their true colors. The truth you've uncovered is both unsettling and empowering. The obstacles, betrayals, delays, and quiet manipulations you faced were never random. Every challenge, every uncomfortable moment, every person who didn't rise to meet you was part of a larger design, one that tested your clarity, sharpened your discernment, and prepared you for a destiny that only the truly chosen can claim. You weren't weakened by these trials. You were refined. You weren't abandoned. You were filtered. You weren't delayed. You were being taught to recognize timing, strategy, and purpose. This journey strips away illusions and exposes the true nature of the world around you, revealing who genuinely aligns with your path and who only exists to distract, delay, or diminish you. Every subtle manipulation, every quiet withdrawal, every moment of isolation wasn't just hardship. It was a signal, a test, and a lesson. And through it all, you discovered something undeniable. Your power isn't just in your abilities, your gifts, or your strength. It's in your awareness, your discernment, and your capacity to rise in the face of carefully orchestrated opposition. You've seen the masks fall, the hidden agendas surface, and the world's attempts to shape you into something predictable. And you've emerged stronger, sharper, and more aligned with the life you were always meant to live. Being chosen isn't just a title, it's a responsibility, a journey, and a revelation. It's a call to see clearly, act decisively, and move forward with unwavering purpose, no matter how subtle the resistance or how invisible the forces working against you may be. The plot may have been set, but your awakening ensures it no longer holds power over you. Every trial, every betrayal, every setback was a catalyst, and now, fully aware, you are unstoppable. If this message resonated with you and opened your eyes to the patterns in your own life, make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe to the channel for more deep, truth-revealing content. Like this video if it hit home, comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with someone who needs to see this. Your journey is just beginning, and the world is about to witness what a truly awakened, chosen one looks like. Stay blessed always.